McQuestion, talking about things that matter with people who care. Production of McQuestion is made possible in part by individual viewers, supporters of the Foundation for Responsible Television, CF Accountants and Consultants, adding value to clients throughout the region, the Hatton W. Sumner's Foundation for the Study and Teaching of the Science of Self-Government, the University of Texas at Dallas, creating the future, Sundown Ranch, one sundown at a time.
Thanks for joining us for part 3 in our 3-part series on immigration. On part 1, we looked at the history of immigration, and on part 2, we examined the events of the last 25 years. On this program, we'll provide some interesting and controversial solutions to the continuing immigration problem. So let's meet our experts. Starting on my left is Pia Arrhenius. She's Vice President and Senior Economist at the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas. She's an adjunct professor at Baylor. She's a research fellow at the Tower Center at SMU, and she was the senior economist on the Council for Economic Advisors in the Executive Office of the President in 2004 and 2005. Pia, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back.
And you wrote this great book, which is called Beside the Golden Door, U.S. Immigration Reform and a New Era of Globalization. We'll be talking about this book, so thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And sitting next to you is Professor Neil Foley, and he holds the Robert and Nancy Dedman Chair in History at SMU. He teaches courses in 20th century U.S. history, in Mexican, American, Latino history, and immigration. And his latest book, of course, is this one, which is Mexicans in the Making of America. So, Neil, welcome back to the program.
Thanks. Good to be here.
And last but not least is an attorney by the name of Rick Gump. Rick Gump is a lawyer, of course, who handled his first immigration client over 40 years ago. He works with companies and individuals on all types of immigration issues. Rick, welcome back to the program.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Okay, so that person watching this program is looking for solutions, something. We can talk about problems all day long, but what should be one thing that we should do to solve the immigration crisis that we seem to be in today?
Well, the critical thing is to get beyond ideology and politics and look at what's in the best economic interests of the United States. And in that vein, I believe we have to update the visa system. I think we've got to come up with a fair and consistent enforcement program, and we've got to deal with those who are illegally here. It's going to take some leadership, but we can't let the status quo continue.
All right. Neil, what should we do?
Well, the first thing we need to do is stop thinking of immigration as a huge crisis. Immigration is what's going to save this nation in the future. Immigration is what's going to give us the means to support an increasingly graying nation who are going to need workers for Social Security to support the Social Security system and Medicare and so forth. Right now in Europe and particularly in Japan, they have negative birth rates and they don't have enough immigrants to make up the difference. So they're facing a very, very difficult future. Japan right now, just to give you an example, has had the highest negative birth rate in the history of taking this kind of data. They now have the market for adult diapers in Japan now exceeds the market for baby diapers. I don't think we want to go there. And immigration is what's preventing us from going there, because as the non-Hispanic white population in this country continues to decline because of negative birth rates, right? The birth rate for non-Hispanic whites is about 1.8. It takes about 2.1 to reproduce or replace and Asian Americans also have a 1.8. Okay, so Latinos in this country have about a 2.4 birth rate, which is not huge, but it's enough to drive the numbers up so that we can keep ourselves economically in good shape.
All right. You will not be surprised to know that we've visited this issue one time before. And if we're ready, let's run that video number 9, please. Let's talk about demographics. The numbers that you talked about last time, if we could put that graphic up there again, let's look at the demographics for a lot of Europe and the U.S. And here it is here. So
Well, Europe
give-
is 1.5, so they're about 30% below the 2.1 replacement level. The United States, for about 30 years, has been at 2, just fractionally below the replacement level. This year, 2008, for the first time in 30 years, we're going to hit the 2.1 level. So that's changed.
And that's
Now,
a good change.
It's a good change. Now, we don't know why. Now, it could be simply the birth rate's up. When you break down the numbers ethnically, the Anglo birth rate in the U.S. is 1.8, same as France. The Hispanic birth rate in the U.S. is 2.75. That's why we have a 2.1 birth rate. Now, it may be that that's where the push is coming, or it may be that it's among the Anglos going up. We don't know that yet. Last year in the United States, 23% of all births in this country were to women who themselves had not been born in the United States. That's very high.
Yeah.
Now, there's nothing wrong with this. It's okay. But we just need to understand what the
And in
numbers
fact, one of the things that argues for immigration, it seems like nobody's for immigration anymore, but one of the things that argues for immigration is that unlike Japan, let's say, who is not going to let people into that culture, and that society is going to continue to age and age rather, that the immigration can and has had positive impact on the United States, yes or no?
Yes. We should be in favor of immigration. That's how we got here.
Okay, that's how we got here, Neil, including all of us. Now, I want to look at some of your graphics just to set the stage for what these solutions need to be and why. So let's look at graphic number 1. And on graphic number 1, you've listed for us the top 5 states by Hispanic population. Obviously, California is ahead, but the percentage happens to be the same as Texas. Then we've got Florida, New York, Illinois. Now let's look at graphic number 2. And graphic number 2 is the type of origin, Hispanic origin groups. And you've got Mexican, obviously at the top with 64%, and then Puerto Rican, Cuban, Dominican Republic, et cetera. So let's just talk about those 2 slides right now. Give us some color on that.
Well, first, if you go back to the last slide, one thing you probably notice, certainly people in politics are noticing it, is that those 5 states represent about, I think if I remember correctly, 63% of the electoral votes needed to become president of the United States, of the 270. So this is why people in this country are concerned about, the Hispanic vote. These are the largest states in the nation, and that's also where the greatest number of Hispanic descent people live. The greatest percentage of those 53 million are Latinos in the United States are of Mexican origin. That's 2012 data. Today it's about 66, maybe 67%. 2/3 of all Latinos are Mexican origin.
All right, so let me look quickly at slides that sort of look at the blue. So let's look at graphic 3, 4, 5, and 6. So here's 3, the percentage in 1980. Now let's go forward to the next one, to 1990, and let's watch the blue, ladies and gentlemen. Now 2000. Okay, and now 2006, which I think is the latest numbers you have. And so what does that tell us about where we are?
Well, it tells you that the Latino population is where you would expect it to be. The Mexican origin population is is in the Southwest, but increasingly is moving into the Midwest and the traditional states of the South, and even to New England. And this is a major development as newer immigrants leapfrog over older established immigrant communities into establishing new communities again in the 11 states of the South. And that's the region with the fastest growing population of Latinos in the nation.
All right, Pia, your book is about the economic impact and why we need to look at economic impact in terms of this. What should we do?
Well, the economy grows in 2 ways. The economy grows with a growing population, but more importantly, the economy grows with productivity growth, which is really what you need to seek out because productivity growth is the way that we raise living standards in this country and around the world. So what we need to do in terms of immigration policy is not just bring in people, but also bring in focus on the high-skilled, employment-based immigration, which is the type of workers that come into the sectors, the industrial sectors, where there's a lot of innovation, productivity growth, and entrepreneurism. So the STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, math, the high-tech fields. This is where we have some of the most competitive industries in the world, are U.S. companies in these sectors, and they're dying for this foreign labor, which right now current policies are severely restricting.
All right, let's look at that pie chart of yours that compares the U.S. with Canada. So if we're ready for that pie chart, let's put it up there, which is graphic 1 of PIA's. And so, but while
well, I can tell you what's in the chart.
Well, tell me what's in the chart. Yes.
Well, basically, my point is we have that the U.S. immigration policy is falling behind. We used to be the example for the world of how to bring people in and bring the right people in. And we have fallen behind in the sense that other countries such as Australia or Canada are understanding that economic and high-skilled based immigration is the most important type of immigration, and they're changing their policies to address it. So if you look at Canada, for example, 60 to 65% of their permanent resident visas are going to skill-based immigrants. And in the United States, it's 15% are going to skill-based immigrants. So 85% of our permanent resident visas are going to family and humanitarian visas. And I'm not saying that number should be reduced, but I'm saying our priorities need to be changed. The whole pie needs to grow larger, and we need to allocate a much larger share to economic and skill-based immigration.
What's the restriction on this, Rick? Why can't we get more?
Well, Dennis, let me highlight what she said. We had in our office a Chinese scientist who was teaching at the University of London. He was known for patents that he created. He was wanted here to collaborate on a series of patents, and we looked at the temporary and permanent visas, and under our current system, there was no way that we could bring him in within the next couple of years. The irony is that what he was really good at was patents for security for airports, but we kicked him out. We didn't keep him. But our system amazingly does not let supply meet demand, and so these high-skilled workers that Pia is talking about, I could give you example after example where our system just isn't updated and doesn't allow it to occur.
Yeah, but people say, look, you bring immigrants in, Rick, they take Americans' jobs. I mean, that's a great argument. How do you defend your position?
Numbers aren't everything. You know, if I wanted to hire a paralegal, and I had 20 U.S. scientists standing in front of me looking for a job, that really doesn't help me. Supply has to meet demand, okay? And it's ironic, but if you bring in the right kind of foreign nationals, whether it's for doing research or in the STEMs fields, it actually creates U.S. jobs as opposed to taking those jobs elsewhere, out of the country, which is happening every day.
Well, it sounds to me like, Neil, bringing in the right kind is what we've been talking about immigration policy for 200 years. We didn't want the Chinese, we didn't want the Japanese, we didn't want Southern Europe, we didn't want this. I mean, aren't these people being a little elitist?
Well, the reality of it is the people who want to come to the United States don't pay much attention to the views that we hold of them, the racist laws that we create to keep them out. And I mean, when I say a racist law, I mean it in the sense that the law has a racial basis to it, and it's very clear. If you read the law, the 1790 Naturalization Law, it spells it out, only free white person. So this is not, someone pointing the finger at the past and saying this is racist. This is what it was. And most people who study history understand that certainly the time up until World War II, this was something that did not need to be masked. But they're going to come regardless of what our situation is.
You got to secure the border, Neil. Don't you understand? Secure the border. What part of that do you not get? I am wearing a constitutional tie here, and Article 1 says that we have to secure the border, and we know how to. I mean, what do you not want to enforce the laws in the U.S. or not? Tell me about this. You're a teacher, for God's sakes. Do we enforce the laws or don't we?
Well, we try to enforce the laws as best we can, and we've got 12 million undocumented people in this country who are trying to figure out ways to make their families whole again. What we've been talking about is how do you fix the problem for the future? And it seems to me that if we can't even fix the present problem, how are we going to fix the future problem? Now, I'm not here to predict the future. My job is to predict the past. So I would suggest that something that was said earlier, and that is that this executive order of President Obama's, right, which made not legal the 4.5 or so million people that it affects, but these are the parents of U.S. children citizens, okay, who have been given a 3-year reprieve from being deported and being issued work permits. It's not a path to citizenship, it's not legality. It's an attempt to fix a problem that exists right now. And I think if you look at any kind of rational immigration reform, it's going to have to work not only to repair what Pia has called this random patchwork thing, but it's also going to have to fix the problems that have accrued since 1965.
But Neil, you mentioned the word rational. No. This is politics. And you know Marx's definition of politics. Do you remember that? The art of looking for trouble, finding it everywhere, diagnosing it wrong, and applying unsuitable remedies. Now, that was Groucho Marx, but nevertheless, I think that's fairly right. Don't you, Pia? Because Rick is saying we need to put politics aside. It's all politics, isn't it?
Well, maybe that explains why I haven't had much success with the economics argument. I don't understand the politics very well, I have to say. I think the economics are straightforward, and I understand that people have reservations about immigration reform and undocumented immigration and addressing these types of issues, and I understand that it's controversial. However, you have to look forward and sort of move forward, and I think the only way is to do the type of comprehensive reform that we've been talking about.
Okay, now look, that person, there's a person out there, I don't know which one it is, I can't tell which one. Anyway, and they're saying right now, they're just jumping up and down and they're saying, Dennis, would you ask her that when people come across the border illegally, do they provide more benefits or do they take more taxes and other services? I mean, which is it? Are they positive economically or are they negative?
Well, that's tricky, and it's good that you raised that question. I discussed that in my research. Basically, the labor market impacts are positive. If you think of the low-skilled immigration, and whether it's unauthorized or legal, whichever, it has a huge benefit for consumers. If you think of whether you're having people work on your house or you're going to a restaurant, in a number of ways, we benefit as consumers from this influx of low-skilled labor, and there's no getting around that. I think that's been proven in the research, and it makes a lot of sense, I think, to us as individuals. The problem does come, however, with a lot of low-skilled immigration, there is a fiscal impact. Now, we define the fiscal impact as what you contribute in taxes minus what you use up in services. Now, of course, immigrants are generally not eligible for welfare or those types of programs, but they do need healthcare and public education. And so what happens is if you have low education immigrants, they do, over their lifetimes, actually have a negative fiscal impact. That's why I argue for high-skilled immigration to counterbalance negative fiscal impact of low-skilled immigration.
Okay, I'm going to look at one of your graphics, Neil. It's graphic number 8. And this is where a lot of people are these days. So let's put that graphic up and see if we can figure what it looks like. Stop illegal alien invasion. So that's a lot of what it says. Now, I had the opportunity to visit with former President of Mexico, Vicente Fox, and we're going to play his video here in just a minute, which is video number 10. And I asked him this question. I said, President Fox, give us your perspective on what you think our immigration policy should be. So when we're ready to run video number 10, let's see what Vicente Fox has to say. Let me ask you about immigration. Take us back 25 years ago. Give us some sense of what the immigration situation was from your perspective then, and bring us on up to today about where you see immigration, particularly between Mexico and the U.S.
It's been a long issue, but today there is a debate about migration itself. I think it's a blessing. I think it's an asset. I think nations are built strong and successful because of migration. What better example than United States? Everybody here, except few native Indian Americans, the rest came from somewhere else, from Africa, from Europe, from Asia, from Latin America, from elsewhere in the world. And that's what has made this nation so strong, so successful. At the same time, we pay attention in migration when it's border crossing, but we don't pay attention to the migration within our own nations. How many people in the States moved from the east to the west, migrated, looking for a better life? How many people migrate from rural areas, millions, to urban cities to look for a better life? So it's a blessing, and it moves the energy, the talent, the capacities of human beings. Another epoch was the Second World War. When Second World War came about, this nation imported 2.5 million Mexicans to help the nation to come out of the crisis where it was, to be able to produce what was needed at that time, because the US citizens were at war. And so women took over and migrants took over. And unfortunately, after they did that great job for this nation, those 2.5 million Mexicans, you just send them back. And they didn't even get the thanks that they deserved for contributing to this nation. So that's what migration is all about. So I don't claim open borders. What I pursue and what I promote is a orderly flow of migrants according to the needs of each nation. And of course, each nation has the sovereignty right to protect your borders and to determine how many people you want in and out. Now, what has to be done in this nation is to take a decision and take the bull by the horns, which is this bill that is in Congress that was presented time ago on a bipartisan way by Senator McCain and Senator Kennedy together, which is and describes exactly what would be the best approach to making migration a strong asset to this nation. I hope pretty soon Congress, US Congress, will take that bill, discuss it, and approve it, because that will fill all empty spaces that bad people, that governments that do not understand the issue are taking decisions by themselves, state governments, when it's a federal issue. So I really take this opportunity to request to US Congress very humbly, please take that bill, discuss it, and come out with the solution that this nation needs.
Okay, Rick, he's talking about a Senate bill that was introduced. It passed, I think, in the Senate, didn't pass in the House. We're going to be in 2015 now looking at a different mix, but I don't know that, can the Republicans do something to make some law pass that the president will sign, or where are we going to be in your estimation?
We're a nation of laws, and I think we are getting at that critical mass where something needs to be done, something needs to be passed. There's a lot of pressure, and I think it will happen. The Kennedy-McCain bill was an excellent bill. Now, it was a bill, it was not passed. That was back in 2007. In 2010, our current Senate passed a similar bill. If you mix the two together, there are a lot of very good things that do solve a lot of problems. The issue is it's going to take some leadership, because you're not going to please everyone. And because there are so many issues, you simply have to deal with them, make your choices, so that, as President Fox said, you'll be able to have your sovereignty, but at the same time make migration a plus.
Well, everybody hates the A word, amnesty. Is there going to be amnesty again? I mean, I thought in '86 we weren't going to have any more amnesty, yes?
You know, I handled many amnesty cases and employer sanctions cases back then, and then employer sanctions now. And I will tell you that there has been a significant change, a development, a movement toward a culture of compliance. It isn't there yet, but you know, your grandfather didn't like the tax laws, the income tax laws, when they were passed, and generations later, you know, we're still getting into a culture of compliance there.
Yeah, well, my grandfather was right. I can tell you that about the tax laws. Now, Neil, the politics of this thing, the Republicans all say that the Democrats want to bring in a bunch of people, and the Democrats are not exactly saying this, except when Jonathan Gruber said this about health care. He said the citizens are too dumb to know what to do, so we'll just do whatever it is for them. And a lot of Democrats have effectively said these people are too dumb to know to vote for Republicans. They ought to vote for us because we're better than Republicans, or we're dumber than Republicans, or we're smarter than Republicans, or we give them more than Republicans. I mean, what's the politics on this thing?
The politics are the politics of fear, quite honestly. It's, Rush Limbaugh called undocumented Democrats. When you can reduce something as important as our immigration crisis to, a battle between Republicans and Democrats, you have a much more significant problem than just the immigration debate. The future of this country is scary for a lot of people, and it's scary for a particular demographic. It's scary to that non-Hispanic white demographic, roughly 50 years and older, the so-called silent generation and the greatest generation, World War II generation. And the reason they're frightened by this is because they know that what the demographers have been saying since 1990 in a Time magazine cover, that someday in the 21st century, non-Hispanic whites are going to be a minority in this country. And they were saying back in the end of the 20th century, no, that's not going to happen. Now everybody knows it's going to happen. We know it's going to happen between 2040 and 2050. And the idea that the United States of America can still be America with a minority of white people in it is just too frightening for many people to contemplate.
Okay, we have 30 seconds left. Pia, give us your thoughts about what we should do.
Well, I'm hoping with the economy doing better, that maybe Congress and the president can come to terms on immigration and pass something that'll work for the nation. I think it's becoming an embarrassment, really, the situation that we're in with the backlogs that people are stuck in and the inability for companies to hire the labor that they need.
Well, I'm looking forward to see all three of you on C-SPAN testifying so they would listen to somebody who knew what they were talking about. So, I don't know if these solutions agreed with yours or just made you angry. But either way, we hope to have informed the debate. Immigration is a very complex subject, and to understand more about it, go to McQuestion TV to view parts 1 and part 2 of this series. Educate yourself so that at a cocktail party, hey, you'll know more than anyone else and your opinions will be even better informed, or else you'll drink too much and they'll think you know what you're talking about. So follow us on Twitter, and thanks again for allowing us to enter your home to talk about things that matter with people who really care.
A DVD of this program is available for $20 plus $5 postage and handling, and in Texas, applicable tax. For more information, call 214-750-5157 or email nikkien@nikkimcquestion.com. Visit our website at www.mcquestiontv.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at www.twitter.com/McQuestionTV or download McQuestion TV video podcasts on iTunes. Production of McQuestion is made possible in part by individual viewers, supporters of the Foundation for Responsible Television, CF Accountants and Consultants, adding value to clients throughout the region, the Hatton W. Sumner's Foundation for the Study and Teaching of the Science of Self-Government, the University of Texas at Dallas, creating the future, Sundown Ranch, one sundown at a time.